thought I could play and get into their
Yeah,
first team,
fair
and
enough.
one of the only, well, the only taker at the time was Harry Redknapp. And Harry said to me, "Look, just need to get it past my chairman." This went on for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden, the week before the season was due to start,
Yeah,
Harry rang me and said, "We got Tottenham at home next Saturday. I've got it past the chairman. Come down Monday, sign your contract, and you're playing next Saturday." And that was it.
fantastic.
So he was the one who took a punt on me, to be fair,
Yeah, fair play to him. He
which
was
I'm
quite known for
eternally
that, wasn't he?
grateful
And
for.
I'll
Well,
bet. I
he
mean,
bought some.
he'd done similar with Canio before.
Yeah, he bought some players that you thought old heads as well. Myself, Nigel Winterburn,
Mm.
individuals that maybe you thought the best years were past them, or someone like Parlow that was, had a bit of trouble and one or two other things, and people said, "Oh,
Yeah,
don't get involved with Parlow. He's a problem player," and all that. But Harry had the ability to juggle the balls and was fantastic at that.
fair play to him. Yeah, I bet that meant there was quite a few characters in there in the change rooms at the time, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was like a dirty dozen walking into that dressing room. It really was. Razor was in there and Parlow was in there, and we had some really some top players as well with experience. But on
Yeah.
top of that as well, you had some young players coming through, which was the envy of the Premier League. To be fair,
Mm.
Rio was coming through, Michael Carrick, Joe Cole, Lampard. Incredible.
And could you?
Defoe was in the academy at the time, so had some real top talent coming through.
Fantastic. Sounds like the perfect blend of a dressing room, really. The young
Mm,
talent, the old heads, experience.
yeah.
Could you tell from an early stage that those players were going a long way in the game?
Yeah, you could see how rounded they were. The likes of Michael Carrick and Frank Lampard Jr. was incredibly rounded individuals. The ability of
Mm.
Rio was there for all to see. So, and Joe Cole was loved by the fans from the offset. So we had some real talent sort of floating around. And to be fair, probably my job was to probably help guide them as well. They done brilliant things for me. I used to play alongside Rio in a back three, and his legs got me out of trouble at time, but my head got him out of trouble at time.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, you talked there about Joe Cole being popular, as were you being voted the 2001 Hammer of the Year. But you took over the network, you took over the position and a shirt number of a club icon in Julian Dix. I know you're experienced, but did you feel any pressure in taking that over, or not?
No, in some ways I didn't. I was acutely aware of Julian's affection with the
Mm.
club and everything like that, which was is there for all to see, and rightly so.
Yeah.
I was never there to replace Julian and Julian's memory, leaving the club.
Mm.
But for me, it was just a case of coming and trying to win over fans. That's what you've got to do from the offset. They would know me and my reputation from England and that type of thing, but you've got to win fans over, and you've got to win it over with your work rate, your effort, and your performances. So the Julian thing was probably never really an issue for me. It was just I was there to supplement what he'd already done.
Fantastic, and you certainly did, Stuart. So thanks for that. Um, you left the club in 2001 to go to Man City, but then you rejoined us again as a coach in 2017. So this question is kind of twofold. Firstly, what are the key differences that you see from the era when you were playing compared to the era you were coaching?
Yeah.
And also, were there any specific differences at West Ham? Because we sometimes hear that not a lot changes down at Chadwell Heath.
Yeah, the professionalism was the
Mm.
one thing, probably over that period of time, and I've got to say, coming back to the club with Moisey in there and his level of professionalism, and
Mm.
that was the one thing that really changed. But that changed at a lot of clubs as well over time. But I think at West Ham that was there. That's what caught the eye. The club changing stadiums as well. That was in that era as such.
Yeah.
I played at the old Upton Park, and now there's 60 odd thousand season ticket holders at an Olympic Stadium. Some of the fans struggled with that to start with, but I think the club have started to create some brilliant nights in the Olympic Stadium with a European run and one thing and another. So that they were the main concerns, and financially the budget as well. I think the club are
Mm.
in a better place to go and buy players, and because of the fan base and all that type of thing nowadays than they probably were. I remember selling the likes of Canuti and Mark Vivian Foley and people like that, because we had to, Harry had to sort of, balance the books as such. But yeah, I think they've got more financial clout and probably a more rounded Premier League club now.
Fantastic. Obviously, you had a fantastic career in the era you played in. Do you wish you played this sort of era, or are you happy? Do you prefer the era you played in?
The only reason I wish I'd have played it in the era now is for the levels of professionalism. The finances are relevant to me, to be fair, but to
Fair
have
enough.
the sports science behind me, the coaching, the technical input from the coaches, um, that I would have preferred to have had nowadays, because I think I could have been a better player than I was in that era.
I know you were pretty good as it was, Stuart, so don't worry too much about that. You've always worn your heart on your sleeve when you played for both the club and country. How much of that is as you mentioned professionalism? How much of that was your version of professionalism, and how much is that just you as a character?
Think it's probably more me as a person, what it
Hmm.
meant to me to play for certainly my country, and more importantly, all the clubs I represented. Um, I didn't like to lose. I didn't like to play badly. I always wanted to be the best player on the pitch. That was my mantra. Whenever I took a pitch, I wanted to be the best player. If I couldn't, then you try to do that next week. I was always very professional in an era that probably wasn't as professional as well. So it was a combination of the both, but it meant a great deal to me to be a professional footballer. I come from humble beginnings. That's probably why I realised that every day was a bonus for me,
Yeah.
coming from,
So
a
I was,
tradesman.
I was going to ask, do you think that because you started in non-league, that is what gave you that drive? And sometimes, if you come up through an academy, you're a bit too sanitized. Do you think? Or
Yeah, yeah. Personally, I do. I mean, there was a few players from the non-league setup when I turned pro at Coventry, and you could tell the ones that had come from a non-league setup that they embraced it that little bit
mm,
more. It meant a little bit more to them, and they didn't get blasé about the profession that we're involved in.
yeah, fantastic. Makes sense to me as well. Thank you. You've worked with many great coaches and managers, both as a player, for the under 21s for the England setup. Where would you rank David Moyes amongst those?
Well, for work ethic alone, he's number one. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody put as much effort and time, and he taught me a great deal. I mean, I joined David when I was in my late 50s, and been around the block as a player,
Mm,
and done a little bits and pieces of coaching manager. But he taught me a great deal. It's an education. I've learned a lot being alongside him, and listen, anyone that's managed over 1,000 games and done what he has, and what he's done at West Ham, bringing a trophy, first time in 40 years. I see all the good in
fantastic.
Dave, because I've worked alongside him and seen how good he is at what he does, and he does everything at the club.
Mm.
He's hands on with absolutely everything from the coaching right the way through. So you've got a workaholic that is very knowledgeable as well.
Agreed. And as you can see from behind me, that night meant so much to me, and I think we'll miss him. I really do think we'll miss him at the club. Any regrets about leaving the club before that night in Prague happened?
Um, No, the one thing I would say, the European final, I left the year before, and I sat and I was covering the
Mm,
Champions League a few days later, so I didn't go to the. I still used to go in. I pop into West Ham
mm,
even after I left once every month. You know what I mean? And I was there on St George's Day. We had a nice St George's Day celebration with all the staff and whatever, which was nice. So I I'd always kept in contact with Dave even when I left. If I'd seen something
mm,
on the road and I knew West Ham were playing, say Aston Villa, I would contact Dave and tell him what I'd seen, in regard to preparation, stuff like that. Um, but it was probably the right time for me to leave at the time. And I sat there and watched the European final, and I just sat there with this big beaming smile on my face that the team had won, and I knew the effort that David, his coaching staff, and all the backup staff and the fans, and the enjoyment that everyone was having on that day. And if ever there was going to be a day that you thought, you know, there was regrets. It would have been that, and it wasn't. It was just pride in being part of that, so on the journey as such.
Awesome. Well, no, well, thank you for the part you played in getting us there as well, Stuart. But, no, and thank you for your time today to speak to us as well.
My pleasure,
And
no
really, really
problem.
appreciate it. And thanks, Reece, for giving us a chance as well.
Cheers,
No
Marcus.
problem.
Mate.
No worries.
Bye bye.
Right, I'll leave you to it then. Thanks ever so much.
Nice.
Cheers, Stuart. All the best, mate.
Take care. Have a good day.
Cheers, guys. Bye bye.